You alright? I'm the world around you, and this is Pause for Thought on Threshold FM. And after last week's promises of theosophy and myths, I thought this week I'd go back on my word, and then a little forward again, and then back a little bit further, then forwards again, and then back nearly all the way, and then forwards again, but this time from a slightly different angle, because this week we're breaking down walls, not the fourth wall, not vaginal walls, but the horse wall. Yanking his chain, feeling a little hoarse until the cows come, lapdog counting sheep, what an ass, bringing home the bacon, choking your chicken, trouser snake. Just some of the phrases potentially misunderstood by perverts the world over, because this week we're looking into the ghastly reality of bestiality. Now, we might as well look at where it stems from. So, some experts and psychologists claim it only comes about from childhood trauma and trauma relating to sex as a child, whilst historians claim that there are records of interspecies relations from at least 25,000 years ago. So, who should we believe? Psychologists want you to believe it's all because you're ill, but what about those ancient people that were slinging one up the wild creatures of the plains? Is this how George of the Jungle earned his title? I'll give you my newest favourite line from a news article as well to start this show off. This is probably the weirdest, well, definitely not the weirdest, but it stood out to me. For many people, bestiality is a bad joke, but for some, it could be a matter of life or death. And that was taken from a Live Science or LiveScience.com article. And with that, let's have our first song before we get going. This is Dogs Out by DMX. There's some pretty good direct quotes this week, so this may end up as the best research show we've had so far. I know I've said that a few times, but I think I'm building on it each time. Maybe not the best theme, and I can't imagine many people will see the show summary and think, dog fucking? Yeah, I'll have a go at that, I'll have a listen at that. But I'm hoping that you'll learn something this week, innit? Like, do you reckon that people who fillet furry animals are as funny about finding a stray hair in their mouths as like a regular person who doesn't try and excite an animal in a weird way? Or do you reckon that it turns them on a bit? Like they find their moustache hair in between the front teeth and they start reminiscing about a boxer they had back in 2005. Do you know what I mean? Like, does it do that for them? We may never get an answer to that question, but one thing we can be sure about is that people have been canoodling with poodles and finger-ripping chickens for thousands of years. I can find information as far back as 13th century BC, and there was talk about carvings in cave paintings from even longer ago. So, in 13th century BC, there were the Hittites of Anatolia, which nowadays would be Turkey, give or take a few continental drifts. It turns out back in the day that animal fucking was a grey area in the eyes of the law. It was apparently a capital offence to make love to a cow or to share a loving, intimate moment with a pig. Because remember, with a pig, you've got to up the teats towards the mouth. You've got to woo a pig, haven't you? You can't just kiss a pig; it'll rip your face off. And apparently, a pig can't even make eye contact with you when you are making love. So I've always just assumed it's important to be extra seductive with a pig and have a lot of foreplay if you were going to enter into a consensual, loving relationship with a pig. Anyway, if you made a dog though. If you made a dog anything more than a best friend, you'd get killed for your crimes as well, dog. You would with the pig and the cow. No friends with benefits with the dogs. Not even like a cheeky handy underneath a park bench. But if you decided back in 13th century BC that you wanted to rape a horse or a mule, then that was perfectly acceptable according to what I've read, which is pretty fucking weird, really. King Hammurabi, probably pronouncing it wrong, of the first Babylonian dynasty sometime in 1700 BC, which I already think I've already made a mistake. That already predates 13th century BC, I think, because it obviously goes backwards, doesn't it? I've not laid out my research in the best way, but fuck it. Papers and pens at the ready, guys. I guess but then again, I guess though as well, if you're listening to this and you are taking notes to this episode in particular, then and you were already doing that, then me saying take notes is enough to for you to take notes on bestiality through the ages, then I think you already wanted to take notes on this. Like when someone suggests staying in the pub for an extra drink, you're never going to go, oh no, you already wanted to, you just needed that little push. And if you just needed just that little push to take notes on bestiality through the years, then you're fucked, really. Like you didn't need the encouragement. You just needed someone to make you think that it was okay. And that's not what this is about, innit? This isn't about that. It's not a how-to guide. This is an informative, one-sided discussion about people who've decided to slip a length into barnyard animals. Anyway, King Hammurabi is recorded to have said that zoophiles should be killed. So we've always looked down on people that shag creatures, but I wonder why. Historically, we're told that women were seen as second-class citizens, innit? But when it comes to dog bothering, history's been quite fair to both genders. In the Bible's Old Testament, there were bad things said about men mounting animals, describing it as a terrible perversion. But in a possible bit of sex positivity from the good book, it details women separately, stating that a woman should never, quote-unquote, present herself to an animal, which is great advice that's still applicable to today. Like the shellfish stuff, you probably shouldn't eat shellfish if it's not been put in a fridge. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. There are some lines in the Bible that you can take and be like, yeah, that's good enough to live my life by. You shouldn't. You shouldn't read anything or listen to anything and decide that's the only way I'm going to live my life. But anyway, interspecies erotica, getting back into it, is something that gets joked about a lot in films and TV. So how do we know that it wasn't a sort of weird entertainment back in the day? Not perverted entertainment like going to Amsterdam and watching a sex show in one of the theatres. But because while you're watching that, I assume you're cracking one out in a room of already socially distant strangers. But not because of that. Big entertainment though, because it's funny. Because as a concept, it is hilarious. Like the idea of someone trying to seduce a cow for a paying crowd, or if the whole point of bullfighting in Spain wasn't to just stab the bull and kill the bull at the end of it, but was to instead mount the bull and then share a cigarette with it afterwards. And I imagine if it had become mainstream and that normalised though, and fucking it became more of the normal. What people see on TV, and that'd be fucked, mate. Pokemon would be fucking weird for a start. No more dog fighting for cash. Now you're dog fighting your meanest creatures in exchange for a quick go on a different creature. Do you remember the cartoon Catch the Pigeon, or at least the segment of a show called Catch the Pigeon? Like, not only would the three lads that work for Dastardly be catching the pigeon, you'd also then see the pigeon spread eagle on the bonnet of the car in the next scene, right after seeing Dastardly molest Muttley, rubbing the dog's thigh from the driver's seat, all whilst Muttley laughs into the scene transition. Let's have a song. This is Forbidden Science by Jadar. It's not just men and women being treated equally, though, in these cases. A lot of the time, the animals would also be killed for a multitude of reasons as well. It's sinful and against nature, and people used to believe that the animal also had done something that's gone against nature, but that's not all that they believed. Now, it gets a bit weird, and it's a way we can tie it into all the other episodes. It's why it's kind of relevant. They believed that, some of them believed anyway, that the devil himself might decide to present himself as a reasonably well-endowed dog for a woman, as an example, or as a sultry goat for a bloke with the horn for ovine. Obviously, succumbing to temptation was a big no-no according to religions throughout history, but it's not the allowing of the devil in or around your person that was the main fear, because one of the main fears was that these copulations would result in half-human, half-animal demonic hybrids, which is fully understandable as a concern, innit? Because all throughout history there have been depictions of half-human, half-animal hybrids that were referred to as gods, otherworldly visitors, or whatever else they were got described as. So I fully get that it seemed like a rational fear at the time, but nowadays, it just seems silly to worry about a woman having a donkey, horse, one-upper, and that creating a demonic offspring. Like, that's not the thing to worry about in that situation, especially when we know about, like, black holes and that, mate, and all these theories about extra-dimensional beings. Like, maybe it was the literal open-mindedness that was what allowed the demonic spawn. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd imagine that, like, pineal gland must be fucking gushing out dream juice if you're open to group sex, which in itself is another sinful activity. So when there's a bunch of people, and say for example a dog as well, that's got to be a group of open-minded people, innit? Because a bunch of closed-minded people, it's harder to believe a bunch of closed-minded people are going to gather together for a bit of a romp with a Rottweiler, or a little whatever, a parrot, whatever animal, But that's not important what animal, but you know what I'm saying. Like, maybe it's that open-mindedness that draws the demons in, the devil in. It's hard to know, but we'll get back into the group sex though later on. I honestly don't understand if this next bit is a myth or it's a fact, because I only found evidence of these once in all the reading I did yesterday, and it's they're both from the same source, and it's a very strange myth to just create out of nothing. But did you know that it's believed that ancient Chinese men used to get down with geese? Which I imagine is doable, because geese lay big eggs, so it's not hard to believe that someone's giving them a go. But what is harder to believe is that it was enough of a fad for someone to note it down as something with cultural significance. But then again, I've often wondered if these sorts of records though are just recorded because people might know that no one's going to believe it if they just spread it via word of mouth, and it could get changed. And it sounds, to be honest, like it gets changed, because the geese fucking wasn't actually what was turning heads at the time, like figuratively at least, because as the blokes were just about to reach climax, an orgasm and that, they'd twist and snap the geese's necks in order to make them spasm violently and increase the sensation around the knobs, which is fucked. Like, that's mad, innit? Like, that is weird. Well, it gets weirder though, because there are also reports on the internet of similar things happening in Parisian brothels, but instead of geese, they used turkeys. Now, unfortunately, I don't know what breed of turkey they were. Also, for those that don't know, because I had to, I'm not shy, I'm not ashamed. I had to look up what this meant. Parisian just means it's in Paris, in France. And I used to have a pet turkey myself. He was white, and I called him Gobbles because I wanted him to do tricks like Timmy's turkey off of South Park. But unfortunately, he got an illness known as blackhead, and he died quite young. Like, he didn't even make it to one. I was gutted, mate. And as a young poultry breeder, his loss was probably the hardest that I went through of all me chickens and ducks and stuff. Because I spent a lot of time with that turkey trying to get him friendly, and he'd follow me around going like that, whistling, and fucking. That was a shit whistle. It was nothing. It wasn't like that. It wasn't a melodic turkey. He was just sort of doing this call that he'd always do. And he'd follow me around as soon as I got in the garden. It was great. Anyway, speaking of hard hitting though, in ancient Egypt, it seems to have been believed that men fucked cattle and women fucked dogs, which is mental. I'm wondering if it can be used by SJWs, the social justice warriors, as a way of showing deep-rooted patriotism, because I reckon that it's a lot easier to have sex with a dog than it is with a cow or a bull. So that could just be historic sexism, unlike the unbiased bit of the Bible we spoke of, earlier on, or 5 minutes ago or something, But that's just me assuming that it's being sexist. Maybe it's just because it's more of a sort of, is logistical the word? More of a logistical thing. Like a dog's not really at hip height for many blokes, whereas a cow is just a box or so away from convenience for a man. And it's a bit like, if we're imagining it as entertainment and not as a perverse act, it's also funnier to imagine a man balancing on boxes trying to enter his cow accomplice, or perhaps even taking a run up from across the field. Whereas it's also funnier to think of a woman getting railed by a dog, because it could be like a Yorkshire Terrier or something, or a Cairn Terrier, like a little dog really giving it a go. Whereas it's funnier, innit? But big dogs seem to make it seem weird until you imagine the woman's just, got the dog there interacting with her we all know what I mean, just to spice up her marionette show that she's got going on back in the day. There's a lot of competition out there now, and that's with the internet. So imagine without the internet, what it was like to try and get your puppet show scene, or your sleight of hand magic scene on the street. There'd be dozens and dozens and dozens, hundreds of thousands of people just on the streets doing card tricks and that, mate. So you got to do something to add a little bit of something else in it. As everyone keeps saying, add a little bit of spice, and maybe that's where they could, make it a bit better. Anyway, sticking with ancient Egypt for a second, I have a quote for you, another quote, see, well-researched show, and the quote goes, Egyptians are reported to have mastered the art of sexual congress with the crocodile. This was accomplished by turning the creature onto its back, rendering it completely incapable of resisting penetration. This form of copulation was believed to bring prosperity and restore the potency of men. And that was a quote from someone called Hanny Miletsky. Now, referring to the quote, I reckon it increased the prosperity in it because every reptilian encounter at the time would have begun with something along the lines of, I imagine, I'll bet you, probably more drunken, so I'll bet you 3 loaves, that barrel of wine, and 4 goats that I could shag that crocodile meat. Unless it was, after like 500-ish BC, in which case they'd most likely be gambling with coins thanks to the Romans taking over. And speaking of Romans, though, there's a Roman myth from the same source as the Chinese thing about the geese that said that women somehow managed to train snakes to coil around the thighs and slide in past the pussy lips, which is hard to believe in it because it's pretty difficult to train a snake. Like, I don't really think you can train a snake, but there was a story about Sherlock Holmes. I know he's not real, but the bad guy in it had trained a snake to, I think, sniff out milk through a hole in the wall, something along those lines. So maybe it is possible because Conan Doyle was a smart guy in it, so maybe he knew something. Anyway, back to the Romans. Like, they had many inventions that we're told about, but one of their darker machinations was what is reported as, and it's not a very nice phrase, but it's reported as they invented animals raping women for entertainment. And I'm quite happy that died out with the gladiators, though I'm sure everyone remembers those videos that people had saved on the phones at school of like the monkey masturbating with a frog, and everyone would show it around on the school bus and that, going, look how weird this is. So maybe it just evolved, that old pastime, horrible pastime, it just evolved and went underground. But bestiality in ancient times isn't always reported as negative. For example, before the Romans got their hands on Egypt, the Egyptians would apparently prescribe bestiality as a way of curing nymphomaniacs, which may have saved many relationships, and maybe that's where we get the saying, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. But, we can't be sure that that's where that comes from. Let's have a song. This is The Dangerous 3. It's R.A. the Rugged Man, Brother Ali, and Master Ace. Cheeky little advert about halfway through, Did you know that I've got a red bubble and all that where you can buy yourself little stickers for your laptop or your skateboard or something, or shirts as well? Even if you felt, especially weird, you could get a shower curtain with my face on it about 150 times. Obviously, I know no one wants that, but you got to have something different to offer, haven't you, that other people haven't got. Anyway, let's crack on with the show. At the beginning of the Roman Empire, though, it was perfectly acceptable to have relations with an animal as long as it wasn't sodomy, which, again, grey area in itself, that's fucking weird, innit? And from what I've read, it seems a lot of it has now been sort of redacted, these little quotes. It seems they've been changed, or I imagine they've been changed or altered, because a lot of it seems kind of homophobic when you read interpretations from more recent times. Like they're saying it's gay for a man to have sex with a male dog, and which I guess in a way it kind of is, but obviously because they're both male. But I don't think that you can look at that happening and see gender as the issue. And again, maybe this is something that SJWs want to add to their dogma, because if you do look at a bloke having a dirty scrum with his boy dog and you think, that's gay, rather than, that fella's fucking his dog there. Have you got a phone? Yeah, bell the police, mate, because, I would, but I'm filming it, because I want it to go viral, innit, and get some ad revenue. Or something closely relating to that, then you've got more problems than the guy with the dog, innit? Anyway, it seems hard to believe that the Romans would have a problem with sodomy, because I thought they believed that to fuck a man was a status symbol, unless that was the Greeks. I know it was one of the ancient European, well, yeah, they're both European, aren't they, the Romans and the Greeks? I know it was one of them that seemed to have, like, I'm sure I remember reading something about the Roman empires having same-sex slaves So they didn't look down on that. So I don't understand where the homophobic bits come from, if that even is homophobic. But it just some of it seems it's just the way that it seems like unnecessary detail. Do you know what I mean? Just totally unnecessary detail. Earlier, I was talking about how some people seem to believe that sex with animals is how we get the Antichrist, but that seems more like a Western belief from what I've read throughout history. In the Eastern world, sex with animals could be viewed as a good thing sometimes, because instead of believing that it's going to birth a demon or a demon hybrid, you could spawn a god or a demigod, which seems to me to be literally the opposite of what's believed in the Western world. Yeah, and much like that frog in that one video we mentioned before, in the 6th and 7th century, animals were seen as objects in it. So in that time, zoophilic dealings, zoophilic being people that want to have it off with animals, they were seen as no more of a sin than simply cracking one out or masturbating. Meaning that whether it was a pelican, pigeon, penguin, whatever it is, and you've got your dick in it, and it's 1,300 years ago, 1,300 years ago, then you've got yourself nothing more than like a living fleshlight in it. You're just ahead of the curve, mate. Now, I think the 7th century was about 200 years in it into the Middle Ages, like give or take a decade or two. And during this time period, it was believed that sex with animals could cure diseases. But the Christians at the time said this was a temptation of the devil, and that any animal that was up for it was the devil, in fact, in animal form, as this could obviously produce the demon human hybrids that we keep hearing about every week. But science was getting big around the Middle Ages, innit? It was getting a good following in music terms, because I know this is a music heavy radio station, as many of them are. I reckon science was just starting to tour outside of its county. It wasn't quite a nationwide tour yet, and even today in the 21st century, I think we're a long way from like Science's best of album. But I bet scientists weren't very happy with people dipping the wick into cats to try and cure the common cold. It's not very scientific, and everyone can have a cat, or at least share a cat round the village to cure themselves of ailments. There's no money in it. What I'm saying is that there's no money in curing diseases through sex with animals. So I reckon scientists and Christianity teamed up around this time to release the plague, spread by pocket-sized creatures, too small to have sex with, but just big enough to be a temptation to a pervert. After the plague as well, there seems to be a drop-off in people having sex with animals for the unspecified health benefits. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but I do doubt it. Now let's have a song. This is My Own Planet by Royster 59, Joe Budden and Mr. Porter. Earlier on, I mentioned SJWs a couple of times, but they're not the only scumbags that could be using animals for sex to their advantage. Vegans, mate. Now, there's a good chance that vegans might start encouraging sex with animals, especially the tasty creatures like chickens, horses, cows and sheep, because this is because most of the time, vegans base things on things that have either been imagined out of the ether or misinterpreted. So when they find out people were once able to protect animals from slaughter by having sex with them because of fears that if you have sex with an animal and then that animal gets eaten, that was become a weird form of cannibalism, because they believed at the time it might be able to alter what they were referring to without calling it DNA. But they thought it could change the makeup of the animal and turn it into a bit of human, and that would be cannibalism then. So the perfect thing for all these vegans wanting to take away our tasty meals, innit? To start encouraging it. Like, maybe the people who are behind the vegan movement, they're already trying to coerce their legion of followers into copulating with the animals. Maybe that's why they all dye their hair weird colours, mate. Like, because they still have their vegan and SJW mentality, so they're trying to seduce the creature in the most natural way with brightly coloured plumage. But weirdly enough, this isn't the first witch hunt that's coincided with bestiality. During the Renaissance period, the witch trials peaked concurrently with what the so-called bestiality trials, something that before reading for this I'd never heard of. But because we only ever really get taught about the witch trials. I can't imagine though in schools they'd really get away with here's the witch trials, and at the same time the bestiality trials, because everyone would just be laughing, wouldn't they? Because it's fucking weird. And then you get the weird kid in class who's like, "You what? I can fuck me dog." He's like, "That's a thing you can do," And obviously you don't want that to happen. Maybe they only taught us about the witch trials though, because the big they want us to fear magic, but to allow for the sex with animals to sort of slip under the radar, because when all the magic's been sucked out of the world and it's been forgotten about, there'll be no one left to defend humanity against the zoophilic vegans that are working with the big they to make all of our food producible inside factories. Because if you think about it, there's more money in building food factories in it, because if you can grow artificial food on every floor of a 150 floor skyscraper, then you're bound to make more money than someone using and maintaining farmland at the same sized area. But unfortunately, the vegans are too clouded with emotions, and I've heard that many of the vegans attempting to woo the average peafowl generally thinks that they have a shot at love with their newly feathered friend with benefits. Like a weirdo, Anyway, it's time for another song. We'll have Noah's Ark by Classified. There was evidence of these animal-human hybrids, and it was long before we'd ever gone to the moon as well. So if they weren't created in some orbiting genetic splicing facility, but were thought to be from the breeding, instead the actual literal breeding of a person with a pig. Now, the first example we have of this, and there is quite a few examples of this, the first one we have is from Brussels. Now that's the pigman. He was born in 1564, and he's not to be confused with the pigmen of Brussels of Wisconsin. So it's Brussels, Europe, rather than the pigmen of Brussels, Wisconsin. The pigman himself was a bloke that looked like a pig, whereas the pigmen of Wisconsin came about from this bloke that tried to curse the clergymen of his area that were set to read his will when he died in the future. But unfortunately, he was slightly off on his cursing abilities, and his curse ended up deforming all of his farmyard animals, most notably, apparently, his pigs. And they all suddenly got demonic human-like faces, and all of the pigs apparently stopped doing pig stuff and started just following around the farmer, just staring at him wherever he went, like he couldn't evade them. They were just constantly there behind him. And that was until the man and his pigs went to see an old woman, and she told him, you've got to pray to the Lord, speak to the Lord will help. I can't help you with this, but the Lord will help. So he went home to his home in Wisconsin, Brussels, and he built a little shrine to the Lord, and apparently that shrine is still there to this day, and this is the story around that shrine. So there must be maybe not some truth to it, but maybe a fair chunk of truth to it somewhere, about these pig-faced, man-faced pigs, well, man-demon-faced pigs. Anyway, he did, and he started praying, and then the pigs went back to normal, and all of his animals returned back to normal. But that's not what I'm on about. That's a different story, innit? There was also the pig-faced woman of the 1600s, which I'm guessing was just an ugly or a somewhat deformed woman. I mean, to be ugly and deformed isn't always the same thing, but I imagine if you're deformed to the extreme when you look like a pig, then you're not exactly a looker. But then again, saving grace for the zoophile, innit? Because they get the best of both worlds. Well, no, they don't actually, do they? Because they're not interested in having sex with people. They only want animals, and then a woman that looks like a pig is just a woman that looks like a pig. So, if anything, so they're losing. And they're really losing as well. But, she probably made up for it with a dazzling personality. And they must have been quite charismatic as well, these pig-faced women, because I think a lot of big cities used to just parade their ugly women around and call them like shaved bears or pig ladies. And I'm pretty sure there's stories of them being in Manchester and in London city centre, but maybe that was just a travelling sideshow at the time. Like I'm not overly sure. I never really looked into that. Fuck knows, innit? But anyway, in the 143 years between 1635 and 1778, the Swedish as a people, they managed to kill over 7,000 people for having critter sex, sex with animals and that. Now, during this time, elsewhere in the world, was a man called Thomas Granger, who was accused of, pens and papers at the ready, buggering. That's the word that's used. So he up the bum, a mare, a cow, 2 goats, 5 sheep, 2 calves, and a turkey. A fucking whole menagerie, mate, that. he went for it, fucking bells and whistles flying round the room, making noise all off the walls and that, I can't remember any other details other than that off the top of my head with that story, but there was a couple more in that, and I've read a lot of these now because for the show, and I kind of find them funny, but they all kind of blended into one. They're all quite similar. There is a couple that stood out, and it was spoken about in a book that I mention every other week called An Underground Education by Richard Zacks. And he claims that 2 years before Mr. Granger, there was a 60-year-old gentleman who was executed alongside his, because he'd been shagging these animals. This guy, this man, the 60-year-old bloke, he got killed alongside his cow, a couple of heifers, which I think is another couple of cows, 3 sheep, 2 sows being, female pigs. And rumour has it, though, that his missus had actually caught him 10 years before hanging out the back of the family dog. Now, as part of the man's punishment, which is where it gets a bit grim, and I don't think the SJWs would really back this, but as part of the man's punishment for having sex with the animals, obviously he was set to be killed because it was a capital offence. He had to watch the animals get their throats cut just before his own execution to break his heart or something. I really don't know, but that's one hell of a punishment. It seems cruel because the animals didn't really, like a turkey. He had a turkey, didn't he? Oh no, he had sheep and some pigs in that, but they're not deciding to join in with it, innit? Anyway, Paris might have been known for its turkey fucking back in the day, but France did stick up for a female donkey that had been receiving the human penis. I'm trying to be as polite as possible, but also try and say sex with animals in as many different ways as I can. And the French rallied around to get signatures and testimonials from other locals about the good nature of the female donkey, claiming that it had never done anything bad in its own country or abroad to any of their knowledge, and it had been heavily swayed by the man in question. Luckily, the courts read this, and it kind of went down in what I assume is French history as a remarkable case, and it led to the donkey being free to live out the rest of its life, I imagine, with a nervous twitch and some weird conditioned behaviours, I'd have thought. But and I really want to link to this, and I really don't know how, but it should be spoke about. I read a study, right? And I read about a study. I read a fair bit of it, and it got quite boring after the first few pages because it goes really into science and that. And I'm not a scientist, innit? But the study was about rural living Brazilian males. Now, men, and this was a study of it was a study of 492 men, and they were aged between 18 and 80. Now, they discovered that 35% of the participants admitted that they'd had sexual relations with an animal at some point. And surprisingly, 35% of the people that were more likely out of these people to have contracted an STD at some point in their lives as well. Now, it gets interesting now in a way, because 118 of these blokes, had penile cancer, and 45% of these people had admitted to shagging animals. Gets a bit maths now, but 59% of the 118 people had only been doing it for 1 to 5 years. But so it's not people that have just given it a go once and gone, oh, it's not for me, But there was a hardcore group of 21% that had done it for over 5 years, mate. What's interesting about it all, though, is the scientists decided that the STDs weren't actually caught from fucking animals, but mostly because animal sex tends to be a group activity, whereas the penile cancer could be directly related to the animal sex, apparently, because an animal doesn't actually lubricate itself like a woman does, so lots of tiny abrasions can be had on a man's willy if he puts it in a dog, especially if he isn't circumcised as well, according to these studies. The juices themselves that can be secreted by many animals' vaginas and penises are also apparently toxic to humans as well. So that, coupled with the tiny abrasions, leads to infections and illnesses, and it means you're also more likely to get dick cancer. In a separate study of 114 self-proclaimed animal rapists, or so-called SWAs, sex with animals enthusiasts, 83% of the participants were highly educated. So that immediately shits on the idea of the other study, because they'd only conducted that other study because of the prejudices held by scientists about rural living, and that there's going to be a lot of people into potential pig pork in there that shouldn't be, which goes to show that science can't always be trusted. And I think that's an important lesson to learn there. And that's all we've got time for this week, guys. So let's have a song to play us out. This is Industry by Core Mega. This is the world around you, reminding you that every dog has its...
and
it's been buried in it for so long.
That's exactly what we've started with. We've just that second gone live.
Lovely.
So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's just can you hear that? Is that ASMR?
It is. For those listening that can't see him, he's actually he's not using his proper mic, and that he's using one of them PlayStation earphones. He's in the bathroom.
Can you see us?
Yeah, you might want to zoom in a bit though if you want to show me that.
Wee.
Yeah, look at me. 1 minute in.
Hey, I just wanted to check that my fucking webcam was on, because unlike last time when it was just it just weren't. It's truth seeking. This
Talking
is it.
to myself for an hour.
It was amazing watching, because part of us knew that something wasn't right because your focus was going all over the place. I thought I don't know if can he see us? And it took 55 minutes.
Have you ever tried to look yourself in the eye and tell a joke to yourself?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
It's weird. It's weird.
It's fucking nightmare.
It's a weird experience, man. That's a strange thing to do.
Yeah. I have,
because you're not reacting to it, so you've got nothing to go off.
It's really... Because
you know what you're about to say.
Yeah, you know what you're about to say, and you're not going to laugh because you know what you're about to say. And then what sort of reaction do you expect back from yourself? I've had to do it a lot with not just jokes, with just talking as well, for doing public speaking and shit, and it's fucking... It's not nice. It's quite nice. It's a bit narcissistic as well. Because it's very me, and I'm the only one. It's also quite a little bit psychopathic, because you are having a conversation with yourself, but not like a schizophrenic version or anything like that. You're having even weirder. You're having a very sensible, what you would expect to have that sort of transaction with anyone else, but you're having it with yourself, which is even weirder than having a mental version.
Yeah, but have you ever tried to trick yourself with a question you don't know the answer to see if you can answer it? When I first started doing the taxidermy as a business, I used to give myself an allotted sort of 45 minutes to an hour, which I used to call to sort of practice being mad, because I thought that was a good idea, innit? Because I knew I was going to be talking to myself a lot. So if you you get it all out of your system, kind of thing. So I'd wake up in the morning and just sort of talk to myself and that, and argue with myself and try pacing round and stuff. And then I told someone else about it at the studio. I told Tom about it, one of the other lads that rented it, and he just fucking stared at me like I was mad. And he was like, "This, that's not something you can't really practice that in it, because if you practice it, you're gonna get better at it, and you're not gonna know anymore when you're practicing." Which is a really good point, which I hadn't thought of before.
Yeah, man, it's like acting. If it's like actors who get lost in the role. The ones who get fully invested in what they're doing, and then they find it hard to break out of that afterwards. That exists.
That's what they reckon happened to Jim Carrey, innit? When he did Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman, yeah.
Yeah, have you seen the documentary?
He became him for the rest of his life. Yeah, man, it's a fucking sick film.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's a really good documentary, but it makes a lot of fucking sense.
Yeah.
It does. He did. he became him and then
He channeled him.
and then just
Yeah.
lost it for
Well,
a
did
bit.
he? That it ties into the show. Did he become him?
Well, this is it,
Was it
mate.
like a late stage, a late blooming reincarnation?
What a fucking absolute mate! That was like silk. That is what's known in the industry as a segue, ladies and gentlemen. And Jack Devaney he just home run that motherfucker just out the park. I was going to bring it
It didn't
back.
go anywhere though, so it don't really count.
Nah, man, you're like this is one of the things. I'll be honest with you. Yet again, done nothing in preparation to this, other than what I've seen in the past, and what my previous knowledge of loose interpretations of reincarnation and sort of beliefs around it, and also the past 35 minutes that I've just spent watching YouTube videos, and it started with quite a really good sort of interpretation of reincarnation. So it was a story of sorts, but like, can't remember who it was by. It was called The Egg. I'll see if I can find the fucker now. It's pretty interesting. But this isn't a funny bit, but it's an interesting bit, and it describes the moment some bloke has a car crash. Wakes up, obviously dead, and God's speaking to him, and God's saying like, "You're dead." And he asks how his family is, and he's like, God's like, "Oh, that's good. Like, first question, you're dead, and the first thing you ask is how your family are. Like, that's really good, etc."
I thought you meant he's asking God, how's your family doing?
Yeah,
Oh, Jesus is all right. Mary's become a cunt ever since she get up here.
Oh, shut the fuck up. Right, so that was me shouting at the start of the video, not at you. The story's called The Egg, and it's by a bloke called Andy Weir, Weir. And like the God takes them up to heaven and wherever, and he's basically in between he's in between incarnations, and he's explaining in this sort of part, which it's not purgatory, but like the waiting room, if you will, while you're waiting to get knocked back out on the line. He's asking questions about the whole situation, and God basically breaks down and goes, "No," he's going like, "You're everyone." He's like, every single person's an incarnation of you. The whole universe is, and that's my creation, perfecting you. Which was a pretty good idea, but in no way really funny. But also it means that you've shagged everyone in your family, and that's really that's horrible. Actually,
also, though, if you could look at it in a way that you've only ever fucked yourself.
I was about to say, all you've ever done throughout your life is continually fuck yourself. For as long as the timeline of this earth has existed, you've just fucked yourself.
Yeah, but that's it's kind of, if you think of it like that, though, it's kind of good in a way, because if you think about it, you know, like you're in bed, it's pretty late, missus is asleep, you think you tap her and that, you might, "Do you mind if I have a wank?" She's like, "No, obviously, why would I care?" And then you just slip one up her. Because
it's you. Yeah, but what this also means is
you're me.
Anyone you've ever been rejected by has been you. Like, you've turned yourself down so many fucking times. You're that shit. You've turned yourself down.
Yeah, but you know, they might all know. They're like, "Oh no, I remember when it was you. You were a right fucking mess. I don't want out to do with you."
This brings us to me one of my points that I had. Well, what I thought was, do you reckon that? Or what's your theory about sort of accumulating knowledge from incarnations of yourself? So like, you passing down or up information? Because one of the things in that video that I watched, that story, like, he was dying in, say, like, in now 2021, but then God basically said, like, you're the next version of you is going to be back in China in like the 1400s, so you can go backwards as well. Like,
yeah, that'd be pretty sick though, wouldn't it?
Well, if you had accumulated knowledge, what if like
He's just the only person in ancient China speaking English.
Yeah, you're just living out in fucking like you're living out in just the Iron Ages, and suddenly you know how to code Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a great idea. This will be worth a lot of money in a few years, guys. Everyone else is there just like sort of clicking and clapping. occasionally dancing, and you're like,
I have no idea.
Do you have money yet?
Yeah, I have no idea what numbers are, computers, microchips, microprocessors, electricity, the internet, but I know how Bitcoin works, how to mine and code Bitcoin, and that is going to be, it's a killer. That's got to be the most frustrating feeling ever. But imagine you just imagine the opposite end of the
spectrum. I don't know what you mean.
Like if you get
which bit's the most frustrating? Waking up in like Iron Age China, or not knowing what Bitcoin? You think the most frustrating thing about reincarnation would be knowing what Bitcoin is, but not being able to make it?
Not strictly reincarnation, but if you woke up like as a fucking some bloke in the Dark Ages or something, and like you've got a mud house, you're chucking your shit just in the street, you don't wash, you're living on, gruel a lot of the time, and a bit of pillaging, perhaps some murder here and there, and then suddenly it just pops into your head that there's this $1 million idea, before you even know what a dollar is, there's this $1 million idea that could make you rich as fuck if only you were born 600 years later or something like that. He just sat there going,
carving it into walls.
Maybe that's what loads of these fucking transcriptions are, like these artifacts are that people can never find meaning to. It's like, that there was how to make a pizza back in like before Christ times. like 800
but everyone
BC.
else is taking it as it's a UFO.
Yeah.
Like this guy with a UFO there.
Pizza.
But then the inventor of the frisbee comes along and looks at it and he's like, "Oh, I remember that day. Imagine that in."
Imagine the other end of the spectrum though, and you wake up like tomorrow and realise that you once gassed 6 million Jews. You realise that was your past life. You just wake up.
What if though that's why some babies don't cry?
Oh,
like they're that traumatized by remembering. They can remember what they did in a past life, and now that there's like they've been removed from that, they're just
you say
silent
because
maybe
they've now know they've gone right. Well, it failed the first time. I'm coming back this time with a fucking purpose. They're not crying because they've got a job to do.
They're plotting.
Yeah,
plotting from as soon as they come out of the womb.
Yeah, I am not feeling where this lad did. Watch me go.
Fired out. Somebody get me a chalkboard.
I'll tell you what, he's learning to read and write very quickly, but he's only reading sort of banned literature. Oh yeah, he's got Mein Kampf. He's got the Elder Protocols of the Elders of Zion. I mean, he's not looking too great.
He's got this pamphlet about Fords as well. Like, he's obsessed with Model Ts.
And Brazil, he really wants to go on holiday to Brazil or Argentina. He said there's a lot of people there that moved there one day that he wants to go and be a part of.
Have you seen though about these kids that do come and they come around and they're like up until about the age of 8, they're like, oh yeah, I remember my family.
Yeah,
clear as day. They describe and find them. And I've watched a program recently, man. That's why I think I'd like to do reincarnation, where they took this lad to go and meet his old family, and he's telling them stuff, and they're like, "Rah, nah, this is nonsense." And then they looked it up afterwards, and he was telling the truth. He was on the Surviving Death on Netflix, mate. It's fucking mad.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know how much I believe about them. I don't know how much of that is like, how much of that is programmed by parents.
True. I mean, I read something today which was, I think it was a 3-year-old. Now, I don't know kids, if you know what I mean. I don't know what they can do at what ages. But these 3-year-olds,
that's
a few of them,
very good thing to say.
And it can be considering all the past shows. And that last one of mine, to be fair, fucking hell.
Did you see the show description I did for that?
No, I've not seen it. What is it?
I'm not telling you. I'll just leave you to see it in your own time.
I'll wait to see it. Yeah, it's on. But yeah, a couple of 3-year-olds, at least 2 or 3, and they've got distinct memories of 9/11, mate. And they're describing it and describing the room and who was in the room with them and that. Now I don't understand, like, what sort of parent is teaching a 3-year-old about 9/11, and the kids are having nightmares about fire and stuff and burning in buildings and the ceiling dropping on them and that. And they pointed at the floor of the building, of the World Trade Center, and they point at different floors, going, "That's my office. From there, you can see this building, this, and this." And they're right, they're spot on.
I don't know. I
And they've
haven't
never
seen
even
that,
been
so
to New York, apparently.
I couldn't pick that bit apart. But I don't know.
Well,
Like,
go on. I've told you like the gist of it. I mean, the articles themselves, they were not like scientific documents in it. It's just hearsay. But
that's it,
like,
man.
what,
And
what
that's
would you, if
that's
I
the whole.
told you that my kid were doing that, would you believe me?
Off the top of my head, no. I'd be like, I want you to show us now. And then I want to be shown in a controlled environment where there's nothing that could prompt that kid besides that kid doing it.
Where I'm not behind you with a big picture, just pointing at the picture
Just
to
a
the kid,
picture
like
of a
signing
building.
numbers with my hand,
Picture of a building and then
whispering,
a toy plane and just
yeah.
tossing Lego,
37,
dropping
floor
Lego men,
37.
dropping Lego men out the fucking off the bit of paper. Whoa, that's what happened. Tell him about the passports.
Sneaking
He
into the
found
bedroom like you do at Christmas. Yeah, sneaking into a kid's bedroom, just whisper in their ear, dressed as the Tooth Fairy, just in case.
Bush did 9/11. Bush did 9/11. Yeah, man, I could totally see that. Imagine being like, just remembering shit. I don't know, like accumulated knowledge could work for evil. I suppose it could work for good as well. You could, I don't know what good it could remember. I mean, because I don't know how you in. I'm struggling for. This probably says a lot more about me than reincarnation. That I can find a lot of bad points you could pass on, but not what any sort of good knowledge you wish to pass up to yourself in future. Like,
No, no, you definitely want to pass on good information, like fucking stuff to do, like you can put on at the bookies and that, you know.
that's
If
the
you're getting
thing,
like
yeah.
a recent incarnation or a
No.
reasonably recent incarnation,
Yeah, I'm thinking up, not going back.
or you
I'm
just
thinking
like,
going
yeah,
up.
you know that you're gonna have in a couple of years, well, in your lifetime, there's gonna be someone in your family known as Uncle Jerry. Now, Uncle Jerry's gonna invite you around when you're about, 16, for a little drink up and that. Don't go.
Don't go.
Just passing on good information, mate, good
Honestly,
intel.
just in
You
fact,
don't have
never
to, you don't have
speak
to
to him
ruin what
again.
happens. Just yeah.
And I mean, unless that's your thing. If that's your thing, go. But honestly, it wasn't mine. But I'm on about if you're going passing knowledge from previous. So as in not going back to a past life, you're going forward.
Okay.
So what sort of knowledge would you want to
Yeah, I
pass
don't
if you
know.
were if you were living in, like, I don't know, even if it was the 40s or the 50s, what sort of positive knowledge that we don't have now could you pass up to yourself? Unless you were like, oh, here's where I hid the Nazi gold. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
fucking
Here's the real
Sam-
Mona Lisa.
that's some shit. If you just remembered one day, like, where a missing Fabergé egg was, you're like, oh shit, goddamn. Or
Yeah, I remember that now.
you fucking we need a train. We need a flight and a train across Russia and Siberia. We are off to find this fucking egg. Why does that? I mean, that is one of my arguments for reincarnation not being a thing, because I've never woken up. I mean, I struggle to remember a lot of things most of the time. I mean, I've for 100%, but I've never woken up and remembered something that I've never learned, or I never remember learning. Actually, no, that's wrong. I've recalled shit a load of times that I've never remembered learning, but once I've thought about it, I've been like, yeah, I probably did learn that. I just don't remember when I did it. But I've never recalled something and been like, I never ever learned this. So that means, like, I don't think that you get accumulated knowledge from reincarnation, if it does exist, unless it's some sort of innate shit. Do you know, like our sense to... I suppose evolution's sort of a bit like that, though, isn't it? Because evolution could be... That's your...
Yeah, there is supposed to be like a genetic memory, isn't there, where and like skills will go into it.
Yeah,
So like, say if
which
you've got two people have a kid and both of their parents, and well, or say let's say two families of athletes sort of thing have a kid, then that kid's going to be genetically advanced for athleticism, innit? Like
I don't just mean that.
that's like a genetic memory as such.
I
But
mean
do you
stuff
mean
that
like
like
literal memories?
no, I mean like so. Well, there's sort of literal memories, but there's also things that all humans do. It's not just based on parents. Shit like when you fall asleep and you have that thing where you're dropping and you wake up.
Yeah, mine used to always be that I stepped on this field near my auntie's house and
But
got my foot in a little hole in the grass
you
and
know what I
twisted my
mean?
ankle.
Like everyone
Like
has
instead of
that,
and that'd make me fall over.
and
Yeah,
then you
yeah. So
wake
that
up.
might be from the very first.
No, that
That might
what
be the very first person.
that comes
And then
from.
God was like, "Fucking hell,
Nah, man,
you've
that
been
comes
alive
from.
for 6 weeks."
This is fucking legit.
Go on.
This that comes from
Is it?
monkeys. That comes from
Oh, from when
monkeys
they're
and
about to
trees.
fall out a tree.
Yeah, when they're sleeping.
Yeah.
So that's like
Oh,
that.
sick.
That's a trait that's been
That is
passed
a
down
little
to us.
something.
So that there's sort
Mm.
of like that. That's not reincarnation, obviously. It's evolution, but it's a similar sort of thing. In like, but science is reincarnation. Like, there's a scientific way of explaining reincarnation because we all do come back as shit. Once we die, we get broken down, and we get broken down into soil, or we get broken down into like bacteria.
Yeah.
We get broken down into the ground, which then lives, and then creates air. So, like, in that sense, there's a scientific argument for reincarnation, just not in the way that you would talk about reincarnation spiritually or like philosophically.
But I think science is just a way of trying to things away so that people can't actually properly understand what's going on. So say if the universal truth is we are reincarnated, there's nothing you can do about it. You will come back again and again and again. You might come back once you're a person, they seem to believe you can't really go back to being an animal unless you're going back to being an animal to feed people. So maybe that's why factory farming's become a thing so that they can get more human souls. But if that's, then you've got to wonder who wants the human souls and what do they want all these people to do? Do they want a workforce? Do they want an army? But that's besides the point of what I was going to make. I've fucking lost myself now with the
thing
factory
is, though,
farming thing. Fucking, oh, Jesus, every time. I just start reading things in my head to you. And they don't even link together. Fuck me.
It's entertaining. It's really entertaining.
Oh, I bet it is. I bet it's entertaining watching me squeeze the back of my head as well, trying to make myself remember.
They're trying to like put
Fuck knows, I don't know.
literally
the science thing.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
The science thing.
So I think science is a way of explaining that away. So you've got that universal truth. Say that is a universal thing that definitely happens. You come back as an alien, a ghostly being, a person, a fish, whatever. It doesn't matter. Even though you won't come back as an animal, supposedly, according to most beliefs. But if they can explain that away with science so that you don't believe it, and then maybe then that comes into it and plays into it, because then you're not going for that weird idea of a karmic balance where even things that don't relate to you, but dependent on how all these other things go on around you and you react to that, it directly affects what you come back as next. So if they can explain that away with science and say, yeah, you're atoms and you go from, oh God, who says the quote, as I mean, there's some Nazar, I can't fucking remember the guy's name, but he basically like you go from stars to sand and to human back to the stars kind of thing, that concept.
Right.
Like that, instead of having that and it sounds a bit wishy-washy, you can have it with science and give people what seems to be like a good answer. And it clears it away, and people don't want to know them because all scientists are working that out. Scientists know that, so then we can carry on and we can tell people more lies like, when water becomes steam, it's always the same amount of water that's in the steam, even though it's steam and it's not water and it weighs less, but it's the same. And then people believe that because it's built on on the old foundations of the science before and before and before and before and before, which is really just covering up what was already there.
Well, no, science constantly proves itself wrong. That does happen, like constantly. Like the theories get disproved all of the time, but the explanation is like we're all the time that we've been improving. Like, we've been developing technology to become more accurate and like be better equipped to answer questions that we were answering centuries ago with fucking stones and tablets. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't mean
Yeah, but what if the
iPads.
reason why they're the questions we were answering back then is because someone pretty clever went, right, if we can get them to focus on these questions here, they'll never understand anything. If we can convince them that gravity exists and that they breathe in air and all this other stuff, if we can convince them of all of that, then they're going to believe in the periodic table. They're going to believe that there's all these other things going on. In reality, it might not be any of that at all. Everything around us could just be... How do we know? Like, we can't categorically prove that a solid thing isn't light. It reflects light. A solid thing can give light out, but everything around us could just be light. Everything around us could just be some form of sound frequency, but our bodies see it in a certain way. We might not even look like what we see as people, mate. But like, I might see what looks to me as like these fucking like pink...
Oh, that is weird
that
though.
look like, like a cat on its back legs, but everyone else might see everyone like parrots.
That's true.
But what I see as a parrot is a parrot to me, but not to other people. But go on.
Well, there's a part logical truth to what you're saying. Like, we don't see, like, none of us see colours the same, and none of us see like colour as it actually is. So,
especially at Threshold FM, no one here sees colour. Just to get that out there.
We are the most Threshold.fm woke 2021 station of the year. We are beating. I tell you what, we're gunning for all the records. We're taking them all down. We're getting that rainbow flag out, and we're standing there with the brothers and sisters. But no.
But it's all grey to us, the rainbow flag. We can't see it. That's how.
It's just cling film. It's cling film. That's what the flag is. Cling film. It's transparent. Because we see straight through it all. We see to the soul. So it's actually just got a still beating human heart behind some cling film. That's our flag. Yeah. Still beaten, warm, dripping with blood on anyone that's underneath our flag, but we show that we see through the colour straight to the heart. And that's a message. That is some real hardcore shit.
It is.
But yeah, none of us see, like, so, like, what you're wearing now is red, and you're going to see that as red as well. But, like, neither of us are seeing what the actual colour of that is, 100%. Like, because our eyes don't interpret it like that. That's fucking strange.
Yeah, but that's just like a regular baghead conversation, though, isn't it? That, like, going, the fucking, look at this pipe here, it's fucking brown, but we both know it is brown, but it could be what you know as green could be brown to me, but because we've called it that thing and always seen it as that. But I think that's possible with people and dogs and that as well. Like, we describe dogs as like they've got 4 legs and fur, so yeah, we've got an idea of what that is. But what if there's someone there who's like fucking they're calling it that's fur, that's furry, but realistically in their eyes they're seeing like a crocodile skin on their dog. Soft, it feels soft and that to them, innit? Tactile and that, but it looks like a crocodile.
Yeah,
you know
I mean, those
like,
people. Yeah, those people. Yeah, they could be, and honestly, those people should reach out to a medical professional and probably get some help. Maybe spend some time.
They'd never know, though.
Well,
they'd never know. They wouldn't. When they're like, "Oh, look at this furry thing," because everyone's going, "Oh, look at that furry thing there," and they look at a hamster, and it just looks like a little lizard. And and then they might still see this. They might see something different on scaled things. I don't know, like furry fish,
so do they think that
maybe something we can't even imagine as a skin type.
Do they think that you keep like? What do they think lizards are then? Hamsters? Are they keeping hamsters in vivariums and tanks?
Maybe. Maybe they see them as like a shiny surface, or something like proper, like metal or a nicely polished wood.
And still moving, like fuck.
Yeah. And all the trees, they look at the trees and they look just like that, and they're like, "Oh, that makes sense that the lizards would live in the trees, because I've always heard that lizards are well camouflaged, so they would look like tree bark."
Yeah, I still think that those people. I mean, those people usually don't have to seek help, because they usually get in some sort of predicament somewhere down the line where it just happens to be called upon them. Usually not by them, usually by a victim or a bystander. When they're up a tree chasing the lesser spotted British lizard, the British iguana that's just in a tree that he thinks is furry, and is actually a massive hamster with branches, and he's shouting, "Don't worry, I'm climbing the hamster to get the lizard." Fucking section team's getting called, mate. You're getting a crisis team out.
Nah, but that's the thing, though. He wouldn't be calling the tree a hamster. He'd still be calling the tree a tree because he's been told that's a tree. But what I see, like I see a tree, right? A tree.
I know what you're saying.
What if there's some weird sort of perception thing going on though for everyone? So even when I try to draw what I see as a tree,
it's like
and show it to you,
colourblindness.
because in my mind I've assigned it as a tree.
Yeah,
you could then look at that and you see a jellyfish.
Yeah, you're basically describing colourblindness, but with everything, with definitions.
Really?
So well, no, think about it. So colourblindness, say you see green as purple, right?
Yeah.
And someone tells you something's green, and you see that as being green, but you're actually seeing purple because you're colourblind. So you're applying that to just definitions of everything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you're taking it from colour.
Well, why is that not a thing?
to
If it
everything.
can work with colour, why can't it work with everything? Can it work with sound? Are there some people that somehow manage to hear sounds upside down?
There's people that hear sound in colours. I've got a friend who does that.
That's mad.
And
Didn't
sound it.
there a composer that used to do that?
I've got a friend that. I've got a friend who hears in numbers.
That's terrifying. Like in Black Ops, just constantly hearing in your ear 1, 11, 13,
the colours
13,
one's pretty common. Like I get that. I've
Deal.
got quite. That's why I did the Freudian slip, but I get that. I know quite a few. I know a few other people who get that, but the numbers I've never fucking heard before. And then when he told us that, and then he ended up being in an article about it. It's fucking strange.
What? Explain it then. So when he hears numbers, what do you mean? Like instead of hearing sounds, he just sees numbers in his
For
head.
music, like when music, so in certain musical tones and that are played. I'm sure it is. I'll try and find the fucker.
That'd be fucking well annoying, though, wouldn't it? Everyone's like, "Oh, listen to this, mate. It's a fucking tune,"
numbers.
And all in your head, you're just hearing 2. You know, is it? You mean like that? I honestly can't get my head around what you mean, innit?
There we go. Here we go.
Go on.
Synthesia. Yeah, this is the one. The synthesia is a perceptual phenomenon which stimulation of one sensory or cognitive pathway leads to involuntary experiences in a second sensory or cognitive pathway. So, it's the colours one's really common. Have you never had that? Like it's.
I don't even see stuff if I close my eyes. People say like close your eyes and imagine stuff. I can't do that. I don't have that. If I close my eyes, I just see like a black swirl and a red swirl that move around and into each other.
You don't have to close it. Like it's not that. It's not like. I don't know. It's weird. It's an association rather than seeing. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like I'm not looking, and like if I hear a certain thing, and it's not with conversation stuff. It's with music and with like notes and tones. But it's not like you just start seeing that. It's just an association goes on in your head. But that one's quite common. That's not uncommon, like the colour one. But this lad saying he hears it with numbers was like the first time I heard that was fucking like that's really, really weird. But yeah, it's the same. So it's the same principle, but that's far, far, far rarer. It's a fucking strange one. Imagine just
so
like
could you mate then be? Go on.
I was gonna say just imagine being on the radio, just be like 42. Yes, 568.
That's a good. Yeah, that's a good noise. I love the noise of 803.
Like what? And where does it stop? Where does it stop? Because numbers don't stop.
Well, yeah, what number? Because that could drive him mental, though, couldn't it? If he gets like a 600-digit number,
Yeah, mate. And he's
and
got
he's
to
like,
read
he
it.
just hears one sound. You just find out what that noise is and play it outside his house every sort of 4 hours. So he's got to recite that number every 4 hours in his brain while he's trying to do other stuff.
If you give him a 600-digit number, I tell you right now, it's going to take him more than 4 hours to recite it.
Yeah, but you can think faster than you can speak. I can anyway. I imagine most people can.
Yeah, that's
I actually
absolutely
pop over
sound.
myself if there's too many vowels in a sentence. So
Yeah, that's true.
there's not that many vowels in numbers in it.
There is when you've got 600 numbers in it. I imagine. I imagine that's quite a few, especially if they're not all if they're all different numbers. So you can't just cut it off as being 600 fucking quadrillion or whatever it is. Like you'd have to break it down.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's individual numbers like pi. Just like fucking
that would take even longer. No, but luckily, I'm never going to do that to him because he's a very nice boy, and I'm not that horrible. Well, I am horrible, but I'm not that horrible to do it to people that I'm sound to. Just absolutely torture the lad for the rest of his life.
Just out of curiosity. Yeah. How long will this last? They are just playing different, look like dog whistles across the room to him.
So what if you?
What if he's reincarnated then from the future, and then or from a place where? Because they say maths is like if we're all a universal being, and maths is like this universal language that everyone uses and everyone can use. He could be a reincarnated soul then from a civilization that only uses numbers, and that's a little bit of that seeping through.
Where numbers are music, which sounds fucking boring.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
but maths class would be pretty fun.
Yeah, you'd all have keyboards.
Yeah, I was thinking triangles, but yeah, keyboards would be a lot more fun.
I don't know how many noises you're getting out of a triangle, but I tell you what, it's probably just one note. You're going to see the same number over and over again, mate.
I just figured it'd be a good way to fucking sort of like teach counting, like because you can ding really fast, can't you, inside of a triangle?
Yeah,
you keep hitting a keyboard, and your finger's gonna slow down in it, or unless you use two fingers going at it, like you fucking, I don't know. Well, I don't know something you tap twice with two fingers, but fucking
mouse.
With a triangle, though, you just sort of go ding 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 ding, yeah, like a mouse.
Yeah, but
I reckon you could go ding ding
if
ding
you're
ding on a triangle for longer than you could go on a keyboard.
If you're associating a tone or a note with a number, and the fucking triangle only plays one note, you're going to be repeating the same fucking number over and over. You've basically applied the same rule to what you've just tried to do to my mate with extra long numbers and try to get them to repeat a number over and over again. You may be reincarnated from some sort of like Japanese Unit 731 torture camp leader or something. Just like, right, my torture. I'm not gonna fuse twins together. I'm not going to do live vivisections without anaesthetic. I'm not going to murder...
She can't make it today.
I'm not going to... Yeah, she's busy. I'm not going to murder or slowly torture one twin to see if the other twin gets affected. What I'm going to do is make people who have synesthesia in such a way that they recognise numbers as music and vice versa. I'm just going to make them have to repeat numbers lots until it drives them fucking mental. That's sick. Honestly,
I think that's probably a really good way though to try and spend your life though, because that's a hobby and a career all in one. Because you got to go and search these people out. You're like fucking like Ash Ketchum, mate, but for people that hear numbers.
So the Pokemon version of Rain Man.
yeah, you're just going round catching people like Rain Man, which is probably. I bet there's people that still do that.
Yeah. I mean, you can't be hard.
Professional gamblers.
You can't. It's got. Yeah. It's not hard to find them. They're usually up trees trying to find lizards. Could you reckon you can fail up in reincarnation? Like
fail up? What do you mean?
Well, say
do bad and then do better the next time.
Yeah, well, either that or play to your advantage. So say, I don't know, maybe to choose a common theme from this show. let's talk
Is it gonna
about.
be paedophiles?
It's going to be nonces. Ring ding
Hey,
ding ding ding.
who called that?
Imagine you're a nonce in one life, right? And you get your comeuppance. You get sent to jail. You fucking maybe you even get the death penalty. Hopefully,
Killed
you
in
get sent to
prison.
jail and you just get kicked to fuck for a long time until you rot and die. But imagine if you were then reincarnated as
A child rapist. A
oh
kid that goes round raping adults.
nah man. What about a puppy? A lovely puppy, and you can just be around kids all the time because kids love puppies, and puppies love kids.
Oh, yeah. So that, licking
And
the face and that, everyone's like,
licking
oh,
their
isn't it cute?
face.
But you're not seeing the puppy. What if that's the thing though? What if
hang
dogs
on,
don't see the dog through
hang
their
on,
eyes?
hang on,
We're getting carried away.
hang on. You're not going deep enough here. What's the thing that's essentially preventing men from cutting off from females completely and living a life of just a male society? That is not being able to suck your own dick. And what can dogs do? What do dogs do quite publicly? What I'm suggesting to you
They can lick their own arse as well.
yeah,
And chew their own toes.
Well, what I'm suggesting to you is every dog you've ever seen licking its dick in front of a child is a nonce in a past life. And what you're seeing right there is a blatant crime, and they've essentially failed up in the world. So they've tried to be punished, but with their predication for for the tender flesh of a nubile, they've essentially managed to become the Achilles heel in every family. Families can watch out.
I don't know though. I don't know. I think a
Families can
hamster coming back as a hamster would be worse.
Nah, man, hamsters don't live
Because they're
for as
always
long.
in the kid's bedroom and they're nocturnal.
Yeah, but hamsters, you're in a cage, which is like prison. That's even worse. Most of the time, you're in a cage. You can't even get to the kid. With a dog, all the time. Kids, families are looking out. They're looking out for the vans in the street. They're looking out for the weird blokes hanging around the schools. They're looking out for the people walking through the parks late at night. They're not looking out for the fucking little golden lab that's round on the corner, are they? That always comes over in the morning. Little pets, brings the paper. Oh, ain't he a good little boy? He's a fucking lovely little boy. You wanna come in? There's a biscuit. There you go. Go and see little Johnny. And he goes in little Johnny's room, just licks his dick in Johnny's face. What do you think about that?
Watch this, Johnny.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good idea, man. It's a good idea. I mean, it could
What's
be
that
possible.
dog called?
Maybe
John
they do.
Wayne Gacy. Oh, right. That's a weird name for a dog.
Yeah. He loves
No,
these
sorry.
weird wigs. I don't know where he keeps finding them.
Yeah, he's I don't know. He's a dog that likes dressing as a clown. It's very odd. I've never met a dog like
No
that
interesting green tennis balls, only red ones. And look at the way he holds it in his mouth there. Look at him. He does look funny, doesn't he?
Before. He does. Oh, now he's licking his dick again.
You come home one day and he's just replastering the wall, covering up a hole downstairs. You know, what the fuck are you doing, dog?
No, he kept them under the floor, but under the house, didn't he?
I
Gacy.
put him behind the wall. Yeah, in the cellar, the downstairs, the basement or whatever you call it, in the fucking walls and that as
I
well.
don't even think
Put
he had
couple
a.
of them
I don't
behind the
even, he
wall.
didn't even have a basement, mate. It was in you know,
Just under the floor and in the wall.
You know, like Americans.
I'm sure he put them in the walls, you know.
He may have, but I know that a lot of them he kept in. You know, like Americans have that. The houses don't have fucking foundations, pretty much, and like they have like draft space underneath the house, between the house and the floor, and like it's essentially it's exactly that. It's like a platform of bare nothing where you've just got structural supports. Like he was burying them under that as well.
That'd be an hard place to dig under, though. You just
Very
think he'd
much
just
so.
buy like a fucking wholesale skateboards and rope or something, and just feed the rope through on the skateboard to the other end of the house, tie the body onto the skateboard, pull the rope
Have a pulley
until the
system.
body's about
Yeah,
halfway
man.
under the house or so. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
just cut the rope. No, there we go.
I wouldn't
And
bury
then
them.
people come along and they're like, "Oh, you're collecting rope, are you?" You're like, "Yeah,
I'm
just collecting rope. Yeah,
Just collecting
Look
rope
at it.
and skateboards.
gonna get money for that one day."
Rope and skateboards, mate. Sound investment. I've heard they're good stock. Good stock. He failed, Gacy. He didn't do all too well. The whole keeping them in the house, bad idea. Never never eat where you shit, or never shit where you eat. You know what I mean? Like in his case, like you don't bring business home, right? You never bring work home with you. He brought work home
Nah,
with
not
him,
to the door anyway.
and it didn't pay off. It didn't pay off. Like people are realizing that we're locked down, that working from home's a nightmare, and he was working that out a long time ago. I don't know what other points I've got. What other points do I have about reincarnation? Yeah, what do you reckon you've ever met yourself? Could you ever meet yourself? There's a possibility you could meet yourself. Because
I know that there's supposed to be, at any one given time, there's supposed to be 7 identical doppelgangers of any living person.
What is it?
But I don't know, like, that would...
Is it a 1 in a billion chance? This, right, before we're going to come back to this, but I want to raise a point.
I know it was 1 in 7.
I want to raise a point, and that is reincarnation. How does that work on a mathematical spectrum? That we're now at a population, we have more people than we've ever had before, probably combined for the most part. And how can they all be reincarnations?
Well, if we are this sort of prison planet from the ideas from Scientology, and they'd say they dumped like dozens of billions of people, hundreds of billions of souls into our volcanoes from whatever intergalactic federation they committed crimes in, they've dumped them in there, and they were all going into the animals and that, and just going in the air into bugs and stuff. But now you've got, like I said before, factory farming. And what I've been reading about it, you can come back. You're only going to come back as an animal if your intention is to feed someone, or if it's to try and be close to your family again, which kind of ties in your paedophile idea as well, because a lot of paedophiles are related to the victims.
Yeah,
they can come back as a dog so that they can touch the family again. And it actually literally said in the descriptions, touch the family again. But yeah, they could come back as all these chickens, mate, and then once they've been the chicken and they've had that suffering there in the idea of reincarnation, if you suffer, you come back supposedly, hopefully, as something a little bit better. So, but there seems to be like a 20-year turnaround as well from a lot of the stuff I've been reading.
Right.
Like it can take up to 20 years for the soul to come back. So maybe that's why they're now trying to get rid of factory farming, because maybe the big they are going to sort of wipe out some of the population again for a bit, so they can rebuild roads, new infrastructure, new ideas can come into fruition, and then they'll be like, right, fucking bring back the fried chicken, we need burgers again, bring in the cows, bring in the chickens, they breed all them again, and then the population starts to sort of rise again because all these chickens are being killed, meaning people can have more kids.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if you're following me, because I don't know if I am.
You've explained my answer away with philosophical theory, which is, I mean, that's nothing less than I would expect, because we weren't going to get much of a laugh. Yeah, we weren't going to get much of a laugh out of it, so we actually got some actual theory out of it, which is, I mean, it's more than I could ask, to be honest. It's more than was expected. But speaking of Scientology, I'll be honest, for the first 5 seconds of what you started talking about, I cut off, because the last thing I watched before I come in here that I meant to bring up right at the start, and I didn't because we got carried away. The last thing I watched, with 5 minutes before starting the show, I decided it was the best time to start a 1 hour 55-minute podcast on YouTube, which was a pro Scientology podcast. It was called the Indie Scientology Podcast, or some words to that effect. And this bloke was obviously Scientologist, and I've never. I watched 7 minutes because that's why I was late, and in that 7 minutes, he gave me precisely 8 seconds of information, and 6 hours plus of absolute waffle of how to pad things out. He's like, oh, this data's super. We've got this data's super. We've got this data from the CIA, yeah, it'll show you how to, they can kill people with just drugs from miles away and shit. Like, they can kill people with lasers and stuff, and they can make you, they've got these things that can just shine into your brain and make you kill yourself. Honestly, we've got data. It sounded like a Trump speech. Like that.
Well, it's just lots of extra erroneous words, just to
lots of superlatives without any content whatsoever. and like glossing over the fact that there's no sort of sources to back anything up. He was talking about ulcer agents but without any detail, which they're part of the Scientology hierarchy, authority, business shit. He was talking about reincarnation without any sort of information or source to back it up. At one point, he said something, and then it confused him. Like, he stopped, and like under his breath went, "Oh yeah, but how would that work?" And then he got back into character because it's a live podcast. I was like, you expect me to buy into this shit, and I've just watched you on camera dressed as what I can only describe as a cross between Steve Irwin and Nigel Thornberry. Like, he had a fucking khaki fucking safari hunters poachers shirt on. Just a fucking odd character. I mean, he's running a pro Scientology podcast. I'll be honest, the bloke. I'm not going to go, you know what? That bloke seems pretty level-headed and sound. I'm going to give him a lot more time. It couldn't be any more obvious that he's part of a multi-level marketing scam, because he was selling stuff with the pitch of someone who sells fucking Herbalife or Juice Plus with the same language. All the superlatives and nothing scientific or like fact based whatsoever. And I thought, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to watch the rest of this podcast when this one's over. So that's exactly what I'm going to do after this show. But I didn't want to peel myself away, because I thought, you've literally told me nothing. And he's going, you need to believe this. You need to buy into this. I'm going, I'd like to, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be buying into. Like, I'm fucking...
I love them sort of people, though. Them sort of podcasts and shows are the best, mate. Because they're funny without them trying to be funny.
They're just air.
But they are informative, though, as well, because you're not for what they're talking about, fucking hell. Most of the time, like, even... I'll be the first to admit, even when I do stuff, man, I know that I don't come across like I know what I'm on about. But
no, the thing
when
is,
the people are doing it and they're like, this is a genuine thing, and you're like, is it? And then it's like, oh, mate, like in fucking, like, if you watch Ancient Aliens, and like, in 5 minutes, we're going to see greys. And then 5 minutes later, it's like, 5 minutes ago, we told you we're going to see greys. In 10 minutes, we're going to mention the word elephant. And then they never mention the word elephant. And then at the end of the show, they go, do you remember when we saw the greys at the first 5 minutes? Here's that interview again for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I like them as well. Them sort of programs, love them. Because they're just... Like, I feel like they'd be so easy to make. Yeah, you only need like 15 minutes of content, and then you
just got to pad it out with repeating what you're gonna do and then what you did, and then not actually discuss. Which is the key thing is not addressing a topic, because addressing a topic means having an opinion, and opinions can be divisive. And if you divide a market, well, then that's half your audience gone. So the best thing to do is not to give anyone anything. That's the key.
You could also go the other way and just divide it away from the minority of your market. So you're just chipping away at it ever so slowly. Like, when you start off with a cube, say your market's a cube, and you're just like, oh, you know what? I don't want the Swedish. No, I don't want the Swedish. Chip that corner.
No, you're right.
Off.
We don't want the
just
Swedish. For people who weren't listening,
I found out something mad about the Swedish.
Well,
there was
for people before you go into it, for
I think it was 7,000 people going.
Well, before people who didn't listen to the last episode, we are officially now an anti-Swedish podcast. We're the chief, I believe, possibly the only anti-Swedish, firm, hard anti-Swedish podcast. Don't ask us why. You have to listen to the last show, because I can't remember. But we are now an anti-Swedish podcast. But if you wish to continue about our hatred enemies, our mortal enemies.
I might even be able to get it up here. It was something about...
Don't do that, not on cam. I don't want to see that.
You do. I want to see if I can get it up on camera. The taxidermy's not going to pay the bills forever. I can't find my notes on it. I have my notes from the other day up still on the computer, but I can't find them. But yeah, in Sweden, there was something to do with like 7,000 people or something were caught with doing bestiality in a certain amount of time. Yeah, I'm on that. Yeah,
shit. Was that like a really...
I saw me stuff about Brazilians.
Was it a really sexy flock of sheep?
I don't know what it was. It didn't really say much on it. It was just like a little.
I'm really sorry.
It was one of the weirdest scientific studies that I've read, to be honest.
Yeah,
because it wasn't written like a scientific study at all.
I'm really sorry, sir. It's just it's a really sexy sheep. If you see the sheep, yeah, it really had the big titties. I don't know where he's gone. The accent's going all over. He had, yeah, he had big titties.
He's a travelling Welshman.
Hello, my
my
name is Henrik, and I am from Sweden. I am from Gothenburg in Sweden, and I will have to tell you, my sir, that there was one sexy sheep. The sheep it had a big ass. It had a bundas. It was there may have been lots of sex, but that was the only ones who got caught. It was a sexy flock of sheep. Was that the story?
Nah. It could have been. I honestly don't remember it properly.
I must have been reading a different one.
I just remember it was something like 7,000. Yeah, that might have been one of them dirty stories that I'd sent you. I didn't think we were going to bring them up, but it was the pictures were good in them ones.
The video was even better.
Cheap to print out as well.
I'll be honest.
Because mostly, like, the sheep are mostly white, aren't they? So you can just print it out in black and white.
I ended up taking all the lamb out the freezer. I let it defrost, and I
Did you put the little hole in it like the guy said?
No, I just slapped 2 lamb steaks together and made a lamb cock sandwich. And
lovely.
And then I served it for dinner. And you know what? It's goddamn marvellous.
Lovely. Well, do you reckon you'll come back as that lamb next?
I mean, comeback's a fucking key word to use. But I should hope so, because I'll be honest, that lamb both felt and tasted great, and I'd experienced that all over. If I had to live that life in order to deliver that moment to me, if I had to live that life as that sheep so I could have that moment fucking those 2 defrosted, cold, still quite cold lamb, like, loin chops, which is quite small. I should probably pick a bigger joint of meat. This isn't doing me much justice.
Yeah, not a lot of meat and quite a fair bit of bone on a chop as well, so it's a hazard as well.
Yeah, what can I say?
I like a risk.
I usually have sex with very, very, basically very, very, very skinny. I usually have sex with people who have recently been in labour camps. All bone, no real meat. That's what I like. People who have recently been in a labour camp, people with extremely severe eating disorders, and 100+-year-olds. The bonier and the more withdrawn, the better.
And you can play the little ribs like a little xylophone to your mate across the room who's holding the camcorder.
And
he's like, and that's how you name the videos you make, where you're fucking this lamb meat. You're knocking the ribs of this little old woman. You're like that down her ribs, and your mate's there filming, going, "Oh yeah, that's the one, Jimmy. That's the one. We'll call this number 47, bro."
No, I'm hitting the ribs and going, "Hey, these ribs sound and feel just like this lamb I fucked once. Were you a lamb in a past life?" And she just puts a smile on her face, this 101-year-old woman, and she's like, "I had to come back for you, Jimmy. I had to come back for you. I'm glad you're here."
And you look around the room. You see a little, like, sort of black, like, pumps that she's been wearing, and this proper fleecy coat that she had on the way in.
She's got a fucking.
It all makes sense.
She's got all the episodes of Shaun the Sheep on DVD. She's got
the script to them tattooed down her legs.
She wrote the fucking script, mate. She wrote the script while she was waiting for me. That is how Shaun the Sheep happened. To be honest, I should probably try and cash in on some royalties. That was due to reincarnation because I wanted to fuck those lamb chops. So, like, I mean, I'm due some money. That's all I'm going to say.
You would feel like the most powerful man on earth, though, wouldn't you? If you could convince yourself, you'd be more powerful if you could convince someone else of it. But if you could convince yourself,
if you could convince yourself, you're only as powerful.
Some frozen meat And then because you had sex with that frozen meat, someone decided that lamb decided to be reincarnated as a woman 100 years ago, so that she could live to this day to visit your house on the next day
Yep.
after you've had like mind blowing sex with this lamb chop,
Yep.
so that she could come back, and you find all that out as fact, mate. You'd feel like God.
Yep.
You wouldn't need to die and meet
If
him
you could convince someone else,
because
that would
you
be
would be him.
great. If you couldn't convince someone else, you'd only be as powerful as as far as you got until the authorities got hold of you. Because yet again, much like man chasing lizard in tree, you're getting sectioned to bits and probably spending the rest of your life on some very hard antipsychotic drugs.
Telling everyone in the cafe and that, just like you never guess what happened to me last night, guys.
Yeah.
Fucking met this old dear, had this other old dear, how man, I like the grannies. And she said that she was the sheep from the leg of lamb that I'd fucked
Do you
the
remember
night
that
before.
time I fucked those lamb chops? Yeah, that's that bird who fuck off, man. I'm like, nah, mate, it's serious. You think I chat shit all the time. I swear down, that old bitch right there, yeah, the one that's rolling out on a Zimmer frame right now, yeah, she looks quite gaunt, right? So what about it? The woman's
She looked good as a joint of lamb.
Yeah, that woman has the best ribs you've ever fucking wrapped your knuckles against. I swear to God.
You should have seen the rack on her.
Oh, for God's sake. You did that just on the hour mark, and I think that's probably because of that. It's probably a time. I wanted to ask you about the whole doppelgangers and it being 1 in 7 billion chance of meeting a doppelganger, but
I don't know anything more on it than what I said. It's
good,
just a
because I'll be
random
honest.
fact.
Go on.
No, that was it. That's just there's like 7 people that look completely identical to each other in the world at any given time. Say fact. Be a fact. Might be like an urban legend, but still, it's believable.
I feel for the 6 of mine, and all I can hope is that they're more committed than me, and they live in countries where owning guns is either easier or legal, and then they can enact the things that I think, and hopefully they can go on to be the infamy that I seek. And on that note, I think we're going to wrap up. Have you got any parting words with reincarnation? Yeah, do you know what? We did some topical stuff this week. We
did.
For bits, we stayed on topic. Do you believe in reincarnation?
Yes and no, which isn't a great answer.
Fantastic. That's Truth Seekers, aka Fence Sitters, sitting on the fence. We are the men on the fence. Reinfensation, Chode's Liberal Paradise is on next. Everyone, please have your passports at the ready. You will be checked on entry. Your bags won't be searched. Don't worry about that. And once you get in, everyone gets a free balaclava. And that's it. What's this episode sponsored? This episode is sponsored by the Indie Scientologist podcast. And I'm about to go and watch the rest of that while Chode plays us some marvellous, what I can only imagine is going to be a mixture of hardcore, punk, some drum and bass, some hip-hop from both sides of the pond, perhaps a little bit of disco, and we might hear a bit of bassline or grime. And on that note, I've said on that note twice, so on a third time on that note,
Here's how to make your mum believe that a friend has died. Pay someone from the same area as the friend's sister to phone your mum and tell her that her sister, which is your mum's mate, has died. She was struck by a road sign that fell and flayed her. She made it to the hospital but didn't survive the operating table. Tell her that it was the sign for a local place that her and her friend used to enjoy visiting together, because in a weird way this will help it be more believable to your mum.